Hello, fellow Crusaders, and welcome to our latest episode of the Weekly Crusaders. My name's Sean Wassacroot, with me as always is Brian Michaels, and today we're talking about two movies that came out during the week of May 7th through May 13th. This is definitely a show that Brian and I have had highlighted in an exciting way because we are actually talking about two movies. Not that we don't love the movies that we pick, but there's certain weeks where I'm just like, I guess I'll talk about this one because there's nothing that I really like in this week. And then there are weeks where like, fuck yes, I'm 100% talking about this one. What about you? I'm 100% talking about this one. Sweet. And it's both movies that both of us actually like as well. So it's a fun week here at the Weekly Crusaders because it's two favorites of both Brian and I's. And we love talking about movies that we actually love talking about. If you don't know, watch last week's episode where Brian got to talk about Oscar. And it was my first time ever watching it, and I actually ended up enjoying it, which is very rare when Brian makes me watch something. It's true. Look back at the stats.
Yeah, people have realized by now that Sean doesn't have good taste. So, well,
no,
when he disagrees with me, it's bad taste. When he agrees with me,
Sean has adequate taste. Brian's tastes are all over the place, and sometimes he wants you to taste stuff that just is like Ravenous and The Vanishing and Under the Rainbow, and
hey,
not good.
Good.
But then he has stuff like Oscar, where it's like, that's actually really, really good. Or even, I won't go as far as loving this one, but Reality Bites wasn't bad either. Kind of thing. Okay. But today we are talking about two movies that we both have seen many, many times. I've seen both these movies well over 10 times. One of them because I worked at the movie theater when I was out, so I couldn't avoid it even if I wanted to, and I did try to avoid it. But first, we are going to be talking about... actually, before we even get into it, Brian, how are you feeling about both movies this week? I know I've kind of been talking for both of us, but...
Oh, no. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, these are both movies that, I've really enjoyed. They kind of came out kind of in the prime of my movie-going time. Before I got married, I had a lot more free time for one of them. But, yeah, it's like when I think about, like, summer movies, I mean, this is two of the ones that really jump out for me. Since they've kind of... Summer started, moving back, and now it starts kind of the beginning of May. Yeah. And these are fun ones.
Yeah, we're gonna start with Brian's first. Brian's picking a film that I think at the time when it came out, I mean, there had been a lot of movies made about stuff like this, but they're more like your cheesy sci-fi movie kind of things, and they still are doing that shit to this day. But this was one of the few that was actually considered a real movie, and I mean that in a good way. We are talking about 1996's Twister. Twister came out May 10th, 1996, had a budget of $92 million, had a weekend opening of $41.06 million. It was number one its opening week and spent 2 weeks at the number one spot, and had a finished box office of $494.58 million, $241.83 million domestic, and $252.75 million international. Now, before I jump over to Brian, I will say this. This is a movie that I probably have not sat down and watched probably since the mid-2000s. And the reason being was because my time when I worked at Best Buy, this was a movie that we constantly used as a surround sound demo. And so I had to listen and see scenes from this movie at nauseum for 8+ hours a day for like 9 years. And so when you do that, it makes you kind of hate the film because you're just like, I can't watch this just fucking Twister scene again. So I had not seen it in over a decade. But we're going to hand it over to Brian now. Brian, this is your film. So go ahead.
I have seen this movie so many times. I mean, when this movie first came out in theaters, I went and saw it many times in the theaters that summer alone, because like you said, before then there had been disaster movies like the earthquakes and the towering infernos and things like that, but special effects had gotten to a point, especially when you have Steven Spielberg producing it, and Amblin Entertainment, it's gotten to the point where you could like make it a convincing real tornado movie. It wasn't just people with like wind machines blowing on them. Mm-hmm. And this movie came out, and not only was it an awesome movie, just as top to bottom, but it was just a great kind of, it feels like a summer movie to me. Like I watch this movie not every year, but probably at least every other year, just like around this time of year, because it feels like the kind of movie to watch. And especially if it's like storming outside, there's like tornado warnings and stuff. I'm like, I'm watching Twister today because I just want to tempt fate, I guess. But I saw this movie so many times in theaters. It's one of the last movies I saw at a drive-in before my drive-ins here in town closed. I think it was this and Independence Day had a double feature.
That's a ballsy movie to go see at a drive-in because of the particular scene. And
That's what made it so fun to see it.
That's a ballsy choice.
Yeah. There's that. And then when it came out on home video, this was the first movie released on DVD. There was like, I want to say like 20 catalog titles, movies that had been out in the past, and then the first new release was Twister.
We talked about this. We both have this copy.
Yeah. I worked at Suncoast Motion Picture Company at the time, where we sold movies and stuff, and we were one of the first places to really embrace DVD and stuff from day one. Day one when they announced it, we had the display up, we had like a TV up, and it had like this demo reel of everything that DVD can do, and the main one they had was Twister, and so we had Twister running, all day every day on this thing to demonstrate. So like you saw, and then just even on regular TVs, for the entire rest of the time I worked at that store, we probably played Twister, quite a bit. So I saw it however many times in the store. And then just, like I said, I've watched it ever since then. So this is a movie I've seen so many times. I have the thing basically memorized top to bottom. One of the things I love about this movie when it first came out was the cast of it. Because, you have a lot of people who never really stars of movies. They were always big roles in small movies or small roles in big movies,
It's a very, very good supporting cast crop of actors that you recognize all of them. You may not know all their names. Oh, yeah. We do, but most people are like, oh, much like
people you didn't know at the time, but you do now.
Yeah.
In the case of people like Philip Seymour Hoffman was in this,
who was a nobody.
Jake Busey, one of his first main roles.
Which in a blink or you miss it.
Yeah.
Because it is one of those things, if you don't know Jake Busey's voice, you ain't going to pick up on it. Because I this time watching it right now was the first time I ever actually picked up on him. And I messaged you like, Jake, when did Jake Busey get in Twister? He's like, always. I was like, and that was it was a blink, like that's the only scene he's in the whole movie. But
yeah, Alan Ruck, who I've loved since Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and of course he had just been in Speed from director Jan de Bont, who this is Jan de Bont's second movie after Speed, which Speed is one of my favorite action movies of all time. So at this point he was hitting 100%. Didn't work out for him after that so much. Philip Seymour Hoffman I mentioned, Jamie Gertz in really one of her last kind of big mainstream movie roles. Then she got married to some billionaire and bought, was it the Atlanta Hawks or somebody? I don't know. She owns some football. Cary Elwes is in this. Probably one of his best known roles outside of Princess Bride. And then Bill Paxton.
Men in Tights.
What's that?
Rabbit Hood Men in Tights, and I guess Saw to an extent now.
Well, since then, he's been in Saw.
Yeah.
But the main full here was two people, obviously Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton. Helen Hunt was mostly big on TV, Mad About You. She had done some other movies, here and there, but again, not.
Was Good as It Gets this year, or was that the following year?
As Good as It Gets was the following year.
Okay, yeah. So, and that was our big Oscar. So yeah.
And but then Bill Paxton's a guy who, like I said, he's had small roles or supporting roles in things dating back to like the first Terminator all the way through Tombstone and True Lies and all these other things.
Predator, Alien.
Yeah, and he's had starring roles in straight to video things like The Vagrant and Monolith and these things like this. Or Indian Summer was probably the biggest thing he had kind of a lead role in.
That's another one that you suggested on Weekend Crusaders. I was like, this is actually a really good film.
Yeah. But he finally got to have a lead role here, and that's what I love about this movie. There's not any one superstar. It's not like starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, even Bruce Willis or somebody like that. It's just like a lot of character actors or people that usually don't get the spotlight. They get to star in this. Jan de Bont's direction was awesome. One of the things I love about this movie that people underrate is the score. Mark Mancina, who also did the score for Speed, I love his score for this. It just kind of really kind of has this rhythm to it that keeps like the heart pounding and everything.
If you weren't going to bring it up, I was going to bring it up.
Yeah, no, those two scores I listened to, and especially for some reason in my car when I was driving.
Well, because it's always the driving scene. It's like dun, 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 dun. Like it feels like they make you feel like a race between them and Elwes' his group, but they got that great orchestra, like fast beats, kind of like it is a race to get to where they're trying to go, and then. Even the moments with Phil Seymour Hoffman playing the music.
Yeah.
Oh God, Shine On they played that like twice in the movie, but like
Oh,
I
good
know.
soundtrack. I
Yeah.
had both discs, both CDs at the time. I had the score and I had the soundtrack, because both of them were awesome. Because the music by well, not Van Halen, it was Van Halen, but it was instrumental for the most part. There was one song they had on there, actual song, and then there was, I think
I know the song you're
everything from
talking about.
Shania Twain to so many others. But so the soundtrack was great on it as well. The cast was great. The special effects, like I said, at the time were amazing. It's like nothing you'd seen on screen before this. And they still hold up today for the most part. I mean, they're a little
The
bit.
only thing that doesn't hold up is literally the very first scene of the movie with the Earth and the satellite. Woof! That did not. I literally turned on going, oh wow, that's awful. I was like, the rest of the movie's not going to be. I hope, and it's not. But it's just that one scene. They need to remaster that scene because it looks so cartoonishly bad. But then once they get to Earth, actual Earth, the twisters look fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is this movie, it's like it has all the cool, destruction scenes you want to see in a disaster movie, but it doesn't just rely on those like a lot of like of the lesser disaster movies. There's still a lot of your story to it. You love the characters and you love everything about it. And yeah, this is one I have watched. I wouldn't doubt it 100 times. I've already seen this movie by now in my life, and I'll still keep watching every year or two when it comes out.
Yeah, everything you've said, I 1,000% agree with. The cast, the Storm Chaser crew is basically what I'll call them. Are they annoying? Yes, but they're annoying in a way that
they're supposed to be that band of misfits kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. They're basically the Lost Boys. Like they're just all kind of thrown together and by themselves. Like, oh my god, this character, like Philip Seymour Hoffman's character, is like, what the fuck is up with this guy?
Yeah.
But with them in a cohesive group like that, they all work. I do think if there is a weakling, it's probably I don't know the girl's name, the one with the glasses. I feel like all of her lines are really poorly delivered in the film. She tries to like emphasize everything super fast, but I enjoy them all. What I actually love about Philip Seymour Hoffman's character, what the fuck is his character name? I'm blanking on
Dusty.
Dusty.
Yeah.
What I love about Dusty's character, is because like he's just the wild card. He's like the dude who you can't tell if he's just stoned half the time or if he's just out there, and it's because he's out there because he's been in the suck zone and stuff. I also love how creepy, like I guess it's either I noticed it back then but I forgot, but like he's always holding what's her name's hand, his Melissa, whenever they're walking around, he's always holding her hand, guiding her, and I was like, stop touching her, man. But what I love about his character is as off the wall, zany, very Jack Blackish before Jack Black, actually.
Yeah.
He's a very Jack Blackish like character. But what I love about his character, and I noticed it more this time around, because obviously me now compared to me in the 2000s, my movie brain and me noticing certain things here and there are so much stronger now because I watch it more with a critical eye in terms of characters and stuff like that. I love Philip Seymour Hoffman in this film because he is that batshit zany crazy character. But when we hit the third act, when Aunt Meg gets injured, his character dynamic flips. Yeah. And he is a character at that point who is all about, like, he's serious and he's all about caring to make sure all of his friends are safe. Because there's that one moment where Melissa and Bill are basically breaking up. And he's like, dude, we gotta go. Like, come on. And then there's that moment where like they're like he is willing to go into that house that's clearly not going to stay up very long. Mm-hmm. I mean, of course, they give him a little cameo about him like pulling up his pants because his ass is kind of hanging out a little bit. But it's that character, like he's always funny. But at that moment, he's 1,000% serious because he loves Meg, and not like I love you like passionately, but like he loves her like a mom or like an aunt. And his character growth from that point to that point are two drastically different, but it works with that character because that character is fun and he's exciting and he wants to have this. But when his friends, except for Bill and Joe, because they're the extreme kind of thing, but if it's someone who's not a part of their crew, he is super serious. And I love that. And that's it's little brilliances. He's like, you didn't really pay attention to him because he's just the comedy act. But like then you watch the second half, it's like, Philip Seymour Hoffman has actually put on a really great performance in this. And everyone else, I even like Elway's is kind of dickish kind of character because it's like he's the villain, but he's really not. He's just a guy who found a lane.
He's the competition, is what he is.
He's competition, but he's not like an asshole. He's an asshole to them because they're striving to the same goal, but he knows that Bill can see things that he can't. So he's basically like looking over at the desk next to him during the test. Like, if you're gonna leave your arm open,
no, it's like he used to basically be in their group, and then he like branched out and got some, what do they say, corporate sponsorships. He's not because they have all the high tech stuff, but they don't have like the senses basically.
And because he effectively tried to get inside information with them earlier, by the time they were actually giving us, they're like, "No, you're just trying to fuck with me now," which effectively ended up being his doom. But I love that they dropped that little breadcrumb earlier in the film to make sense why he wouldn't listen to them all of a sudden, because he's following their path through the whole film, basically on your coattails. But when a time comes for them to go, dude, no, he's like, nah, you guys are just fucking with me because you know what tornado this is. I ain't giving this up. And then it effectively kills him in the end. Spoiler for a movie that's almost 30 years old. But what I love about this film, obviously the tornado special effects are to this day still great. But what I love about it, especially in two big scenes, one is the drive-through scene, and then the one is when Bill and Joe actually go into Meg's house to try to save her. The practical sets, that they are in, this feels like a Universal Studio like ride. Like when all that shit from the drive-in is crashing through. Were they like in a shop garage? It looked like they were in a car shop garage. They ran in, and you're watching like the things that go crash, and you see the cars going. It's like, this feels like you're on a ride in Universal Studios, whether it's like Backdraft or something. And
which they then made a Twister right after this.
They did. But it's like, it looks so amazing, and you don't see that anymore because everything is CGI. Even stuff that looks like it's in a house, it's usually probably the two actors sitting on a rock behind a bunch of CG that's supposed to look like they're in a house, but they're not really in a house. But I like that whole scene with Bill and Joe in Meg's house trying to get her down, and you have that sequence where the floor capes in and the TV is about to fall on him, but it's held on barely by the cord, and all that shit looks so fucking great.
I wonder if that's why I love this summer of movies, because this and Independence Day were kind of like the last hurrah of practical effects, because
after that everyone started to figure it out that they can.
Because Jurassic Park came out 3 years earlier, but like everybody else didn't, or they tried. Trust me, they tried to use CGI effects, but they were horrible. But it wasn't until it took a few years before they kind of perfected, and then so CGI just took over. And it's like, it's a great tool, but it shouldn't replace the practical, because it's something that feels real about it,
No, and that's why Jurassic Park is still as amazing as it is today compared to Jurassic World, because the dinosaurs are practical compared to the CGI they have now. And Twister is one of those things, and we'll talk about the upcoming film when we get to the end of this, but I'm hoping that they probably won't because of budgets and money, but I hope they kind of keep with what makes this movie great, and that is the realism of it all. Like, they literally drove through a fucking house. That was a real house.
I think we're going in.
Yes, that is a real house. That wasn't like a fake thing. No, they put a house on its side on the road, and they let them drive the fuck through it. Come on, that's amazing. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not some editing that could have been done. There's that one scene I mentioned to you where all the debris dropping and Joe's going right, left, right. Like, one of them drops and shatters the shit out of the windshield right where Helen Hunt is, and then the very next scene, the windshield like perfectly. Yeah. it's like oh no, they fucked that one up. But it's one of those things, like we have the critical eye, we notice that. The average person who's watching it, they're not focusing on that. But that's what I love about this. And then, of course, you got the characters of Joe and Bill. First off, Bill does have some fucking anger issues, because there's that conversation with him and Joe in the car, and she's like trying to just have a civil conversation, but it's built into the relationship. Like they both undercut each other, and so he's immediately on the defensive when she literally is just trying to have a regular conversation because he's used to the little like nicks and daggers.
But she also is taking digs out the entire time too.
She is, but like at that point she wasn't starting yet, and then he went at her, so then she started then to do it. So, but it's one of those things where you have all this extra character build because like we already come in on them divorced. It's all about them trying to. Well, they're not divorced yet, but they're trying to sign these.
She won't sign the papers, yeah.
Yeah, and stuff like that. And you have that moment where she doesn't sign the last signature, which it's the very last page. How do you miss that one? But it's because
she purposely did that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, but I'm saying like how like that's what Bill's like. How do you forget this one's the last page? I mean, one thing forget like one of them in the middle. Like, don't make it be so obvious. But you have these great character arcs and builds for them. Like we don't need to see what they were like before these events happen because it's doing a great character story, showing why they came to the point to where they are. And when things are working, you see how well they work together and how they judge. Even Melissa saw that, and the crew saw that, and they saw that. But they're still going to be at each other's throats. But it's one of those relationships where it's like we people who aren't a part of their group see this and you're like, why the fuck are you guys together? Whereas everyone else sees them and it's like, you guys are perfect for each other. You guys need each other in order to work. When you guys are apart, you guys are missing this piece. When you're together, you're at each other's throats. But it's a I'm trying to think of the word for it. It's like a perfect little bowl of madness. But keeping it contained in that madness makes everything inside of it actually work like a tornado. It's the center of the tornado. Their whole relationship is a fucking tornado. But when they're together and they're in that centerpiece at the very end, it's beautiful. And that's Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton are fantastic in this film together.
That's why, I mean, the good segue there, talking into that they have announced there's a sequel coming.
Yes.
Creatively titled Twisters. Which I don't mind that. It's what it is, except for the fact that there were already several in the other movie, but whatever. Obviously, Bill Paxton has passed away, so he can't come back. That makes me sad.
Yes.
Helen Hunt, people are still saying she'll show up in this one. I don't know if she will because apparently there's some bad blood there. Apparently, at one point she wanted to direct a Twister sequel, and then Universal's like, nah. And so I don't know if she's coming back or not. But then again,
I don't think she needs to be.
I don't think she needs to. I think if she did come back, it'd be like essentially a big cameo, like a scene or two. We don't know.
Isn't Daisy Ridley Daisy Edgar Jones supposed to be her daughter?
I don't know if there's ever clarified that for sure.
That may or may not be locked in. I thought that might have been.
Yeah, Daisy Edgar Jones, Glenn Powell, who we love, Anthony Ramos, who we love.
Yes.
What's the other guy? I forgot the other guy's name. Brendan.
The guy from Nope.
He's the installer guy in Nope. It's just got a great cast, so I'm really looking forward to this movie. I don't know. I never just saw Minari, so I don't know the director's work very well. But then again, I don't know that would tell me much about how he directs Twisters anyway, if I had seen it.
Yeah. But
apparently he's at least a competent director. So I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic.
This is the weird thing about it. Was it like a week or two ago? They announced this, and you and I were like, why do we don't need a sequel? Like this does not need a sequel. Just make something separate. And then they dropped Glenn Powell, and then they dropped Daisy Edgar Jones, and we're like, okay, we like those people. Okay. And then they dropped Anthony Ramos, and now we're like, shit. Are we excited for this now? I think we're excited. This is going to be high on our anticipated now. So we went from like, why to shit. Okay. I'm locked in now to this film. I can only hope that maybe this director, because he did Minari and it was kind of more of an indie film, maybe he takes that kind of indie approach to it and allows for more of the practical kind of sets and stuff like that. Maybe that instead of giving it to someone who's used to doing blockbusters and makes it go all CG heavy and shit, maybe that might help the film. I hope. We don't know, but I can only hope that it might be a good thing. But yeah, I hope the sequel doesn't tarnish the greatness that this film is. And I mean, we say greatness. It's one of those, and Knight's Tale is going to be the same way. Are we talking about this as like one of the best made films ever? No, but it's memorable. It's loved by us for what it is. It's fantastic. Like for me, it's
it really is just it came out early May, and it's just such a great way to kick off the summer for me every year almost.
Yeah, it's such an enjoyable film. And endlessly quotable. I mean, you can't.
Oh yeah.
We got cows.
This is one of those movies. There's a few movies. There's Ghostbusters, there's Last Boy Scout, a couple others that me and my best friend here in town, we quote multiple times a day, but not even intentionally. It's just so many lines that have just become part of our vocabulary that we talk to each other. It's just one of those. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a great film, and I would say you guys need to check it out. But who here hasn't seen Twister? Let's be real here. If you like movies, if you like blockbuster summer popcorn films, and you have never seen Twister, I have to kind of ask you to turn in your movie card.
Well, the only reason I can figure it, maybe if there's some younger people out there. I mean, it is like you said, 30 years old.
Younger people, it's fine. I'm talking about like people our ages.
But everyone else, if you're younger and you like Glenn Powell, Daisy Edgar Jones, go check out this one first.
Yeah, if anything, this hopefully might give it legs like Top Gun did. When Top Gun Maverick came out, everyone was like, "Oh, I've never seen Top Gun," and they go back and watch Top Gun. Where Twisters does come out, is it supposed to be 2024 or 2025?
24 right now it does. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe this will get more people's eyes on Twister because of that. Because technically it is a sequel, but I mean it's a legacy sequel because it'll be 29 or 28 years since it got released when it comes out in 2024. But yeah, this is a movie that we definitely love. Like I said, I love it. I had an estranged relationship with it for so long because of work, and even Brian did too. But apparently Brian, it didn't stop Brian.
I was never estranged from it. I didn't mind watching it that much. I love this movie.
It did to me. I needed separation from it for a while, but now I'm back on board and I'm excited to see it again. Next, we are going to, unless you got anything else.
No, just so you know, the sequel, July 19th, 2024.
Is this on anything? I watched it on my own shit, but
yeah, it's on AMC Plus right now if you have that. Otherwise, it's just rental and stuff. But I guarantee you, it'll be popping up. It always does. It shows up
in the next year. It definitely will be. But because it used to be on TNT, like.
So yeah, it was one of those that played constantly. This and
every week, but now TNT's it's just playing Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, over and over and over, or MCU stuff, which nothing bad by that, but throw some Twister in, especially around this time of the year. Let's do that. Yeah. Next, we're going to be moving to my pick. This is a movie that I remember when it came out, I had zero interest in watching this because to me, it just looked like a chick flick. Boy, was I right, but also very, very wrong. And we were talking about the 2001 film, A Knight's Tale. Knight's Tale came out May 11th, 2001, had a budget of $65 million, had a weekend opening of 16.55 or 51 million. It was number 2 its opening weekend, its highest ranking, and had a finished box office of 117.49 million, 56.57 million domestic, and 60.92 million international. I will say this based off of the box office for it. This is a movie that literally had no chance of being like it making the money that it did is a success story on its own because it literally came out the week after The Mummy Returns, and then Shrek was the very next week. This movie had no chance of being a huge success because of those two juggernauts, but sandwiched between them. The reason this movie is so beloved is because the movie's actually really fucking good. I remember this is why this movie is special, like much like Shrek is to a point, is I was working at the movie theater, and at the time, right before this came out, I was only working in the concession stand. I just worked at the concession stand the whole time and all this stuff. The week this came out was the first time I actually became an usher. For people who have never worked in a movie theater and don't know what that means, an usher is the person that goes into the theaters and cleans the theaters up or kicks people out if they're being, which they don't really do that shit anymore. That's a whole other topic. I kick people out constantly, but these are the people that go in when customers complain that maybe the screen's out of focus or the audio or something. The usher's the one that goes in, checks on the theater, checks on the customers inside the theater. But the great thing is you basically get to go watch movies, because if there's no theaters to clean, you kind of just go hide in a theater and watch something. I've watched probably the Yoda fight scene in Attack of the Clones over 200 times, because we would literally figure out on a daily, okay, this is the theater, this one's playing at 2 o'clock, at 3:42 p.m. the Yoda scene's gonna start. And so we would all like find like, oh, I gotta go check this, and we were all sneak into that theater and watch the Yoda fight. That's what ushers did, and if you claim you didn't, you're a fucking liar. But Knight's Tale was the opening weekend of when I first became an usher, and I basically was an usher pretty much all the way through until I became manager, and then I would just go into movies whenever the fuck I wanted to, because I was the manager, and who was going to stop me? But this was a movie that I had zero interest in watching, because it looked just like, oh, it's a Heath Ledger rom-com thing, Knights. I'm not a big Knight guy. Like now, Game of Thrones has been out and stuff, like I am now, but like back then, Knights stuff, medieval stuff was just boring to me. It didn't, really do anything for me. Then Lord of the Rings came out the following, later that year, and then I was locked in from there. But I didn't really know Alan Tudyk that well, because Serenity wasn't out yet, and Paul Bettany was nobody at the time. So no one in this film. I basically knew Heath Ledger, and I knew
Mark Addy from
Addy from Full Monty.
And I knew Rufus Sewell from Dark City.
I did not know Rufus Sewell from Dark City. This was the first time I ever saw Rufus Sewell. So I basically knew Heath Ledger and Mark Addy. That's not really a big selling point to me. But coming into the theater, because usually if you're about ready to clean the theater, you usually check in on it within the last 5-10 minutes, because you're checking to see how many people were in the theater, how busy is it, so we know how much we have to get cleaning stuff wise. And I always kept catching the final joust in this film. And you watch it 15 times, and then it starts to become fun. And so you always try to make sure to get in there right before that scene happens. And then you're like, okay, well, that's honestly how I kind of fell in love with Love Actually, was because I kept having to go in near the end of Love Actually. And then I was like, okay, well, I have to see the rest of this movie now, because I've seen the end 20 times this week. I actually have to watch that. And Knight's Tale was the same way. And I admit, I still to this day fucking hate the beginning of this film. I hate the Queen "We Will Rock You" scene. I feel like it is so much out of place with this movie. I feel like it takes you out of it. The rest of the music stuff in the film, I'm actually totally fine with. It's just the Queen "We Will Rock You" that doesn't work for me. Because you're supposed to believe that those horn guys are playing "We Will Rock You" on that horn. Fuck you. There's no chance in hell. And then you got the one girl who's doing the grind dance, and it's like, it's a whole thing. But I remember watching this the first time. I was like, oh my god, was just the ending good? But then you watch this film, and you know what? Screw it, Brian, take over. I'm talking too much already.
Yeah,
go in the Knight's Tale and I'll come back.
This movie came out, and I really was kind of, it was during this time when I kind of pretty much saw everything that came out, which is honestly most of my life, but especially in this era.
Yeah.
So I was going to see this movie, but I wasn't, super excited about it. The marketing had played heavily into the Queen "We Will Rock You" kind of thing in the trailers and stuff like that, and kind of the anachronisms of it, which you've seen them use modern music in trailers for period pieces all the time. So I'm like, okay, whatever. I did not realize that was going to actually be in the movie.
They were actually going to sing along with it.
Yeah. And they did that. And then there's the Nike swoosh and things like this.
Yeah.
And it was all these things, these anachronism, which when I first saw it, I was like, what is this? This is weird. I mean, it's kind of been done a lot more since then. But back here, really using this weird modern music in this, and it's just a weird kind of mix. And so when I first saw the movie, I think I enjoyed it, but I was kind of like, it was all right. It was
weird choices.
It was weird choices. And it wasn't until, kind of over the years since then where I kind of warmed up to it. And especially once I started hearing, it got this huge following, people who just loved this movie. And I'm like, I got to go back and give that another chance. And so I watched it again, and it really is just tons of fun. And a lot of it is due to that core group of of guys with Heath Ledger, Alan Tudyk, Mark Addy, Paul Bettany, especially Paul Bettany.
I wouldn't leave out Laura Fraser either. Laura Fraser's great as well.
Yeah, and of course Shannon Sossamon, one of her first big roles. But especially Paul Bettany, because I mean Heath Ledger had kind of gotten his breakthrough in 10 Things I Hate About You.
Yeah,
he had a supporting role in The Patriot was before this, right? Yeah,
I want to say it is because, like, for me,
yeah, Patriot was the year before this. That's right.
Heath Ledger is 4 movies for me. It's 10 Things, Patriot, Knight's Tale, and Dark Knight. Like, those are my 4. That's my Mount Rushmore of Heath Ledger.
And really, that's all of his major ones. I mean, there's Brokeback Mountain in there, of course, but other than that, he's had a lot of, Four Feathers, Ned Kelly, The Order, Lords of Dogtown, Brothers Grimm, which was actually a very disappointing movie. What's that?
Casanova?
Yeah. So I mean, he's really only got like 5 major films. But so he kind of had his breakout. But Paul Bettany, nobody knew who this guy was. And the minute he started giving his first speeches, like, this guy's got something. He's awesome. And he's had a great career since then. He deserves every bit of it.
He does.
Alan Tudyk as well.
So underappreciated. He's loved but underappreciated, much like Andy Serkis.
Yeah. So I mean, those guys kind of made the movie for me. And as far as the anachronisms, I kind of, I've learned to embrace them since then. Because I think the first time it's like, you didn't know what to expect, but now you know the tone they're going for.
It's a shell shock because you're just like, what? But now you're in on it, and
you're in on the joke. But yeah, I mean, otherwise, I mean, it's a great looking movie. It's well made. I think all the actors do a great job. The jousts, while jousting, it's always kind of funny in movies when they try to make jousting exciting when it's really about 3 seconds of action, and it's like, okay, we'll wait around. Okay, now they're going to run at each other, and boom, okay. But they make that exciting. It's well done. So I really very much enjoy this movie.
Yeah, Heath Ledger. It's one of those things where it's like at the time, because Heath was doing a bunch of just kind of movies that weren't really clicking for me. Like outside of like 10 Things I Hate About You, Heath Ledger was in the like outside of like The Patriot. He was just kind of like much like most actors like Channing Tatum and stuff that we don't really like. When they're kind of just doing like the rom-com phases. Leo
they first start out and it's just like, all the girls are swooning over the new pretty boy in town.
Yeah. And so like, it's just like, okay, whatever. But like, he's so good in this film in terms of like, he's sincere with his friends. He's sincere with I almost said Jocelyn. It's not just, I want to hook up with a hot chick. It's like, nah, like he sees her and he's in love. His motives in the film is not because I want to do this so we can make money. It's like, no, this is what he's wanted to do since he was a kid. The whole like, can a man change the stars? That whole just storyline is beautiful. And then that moment with his father late in the film is fantastic. My favorite, obviously, performance of him in the film is literally the moment when they all find out. And he's in the thing with this group and they're all telling him to run. And he's just like, no, I can't. Like, this is me now. They're like, no, that you're not. And then he has that moment with Jocelyn. He's like, this is me. Like, she's like, yes, I'll still be with you. We'll sleep with the pigs. And he's just like, no. And I was like, it's like, just like, oh God, like, how did we not realize that Heath Ledger was as fantastic as he was until like right at this moment? And then like that, then like even going further onto it after, God, what's his name? The Prince of Wales, James Purefoy, Colville.
Oh yeah.
When he gets him out of the stocks, and he's like, he's being held up by his guys, and he's like, take a knee, and you watch Heath Ledger's face at that moment, like he's about to break down because, oh my God, like the moment's happening, and then he's on his knees, and you watch everyone, like Paul Bettany is like practically in tears at that moment. It's like it's such a fantastically well acted moment. And it's like, and I feel like it's almost underappreciated because of Heath Ledger, obviously Joker and Brokeback stuff. Like, go back and watch him in this movie. He's so amazing in this film. And then you have
I think this gets written off as more of a fun film as opposed to like a great acting performance, but it really is quite good.
It's an ultimate feel good film. There's movies out there like it's Oscar and stuff like that. There's movies out there that I know if I'm feeling like crap and I just want to feel good, there's a select few films that I can just throw on and I'm just going to feel good at the end of it. This is one of those movies. Paul Bettany, flipping amazing in this film. And him and Alan Tudyk together are great. And some of the best moments that I love is literally when Bettany is digging at Tudyk and Tudyk doesn't understand, and you see him like kind of going like he's trying to decipher what he says. It's, like there's the like it's my favorite one is literally when they're practicing dancing and he's you're still doing it wrong, and Wart follows like a girl, and he's like, wait, what? And then he just punches him in the face. It's those things. Like Tudyk is comedy gold in this because it's all in the facial expressions and it's all in his delivery. Like the one part, I think I've said this line more times than I can count, and very few people get it, which you would get it, where Heath Ledger, William is arguing with Jocelyn, and he's like, you're just a silly girl, you always. She's like, better be a silly girl than a boy with his stick. And then Warwick goes, it's called a lance. Hello. It's just the delivery of that is so great, and obviously Mark Addy as Roland is kind of like the older brother figure. I love that. Like I said, Laura Fraser as Kate, she's kind of like the girl, but it's basically like a guy in the film. She meshes well with them as well. Like I love the part where like he's basically losing on purpose, and she's like, it's kind of romantic, and he's like, are you a girl or are you a blacksmith? She's like, I'm both. It's just there's so many great like just things in this film. It makes you just feel good, and the performances are all stellar. And that's the other thing too, is that sometimes it's a double-edged sword, because I either love it or I hate it. Is the not necessarily the extras, because they have lines in the movie, but it's more like these one-off characters that aren't like important, but they have to deliver a line. Mm-hmm. And there's two of them, actually three of them, that really stand out to me that I always remember. And one is the guy where Bettany is talking to him, and he finds out that Colville is the Prince of Wales, and he's like, wait, hold on, I need to go talk to him. Go before the second coming, hey? And he's like just snooty with him, like that guy. He's like, he overdoes it, but it works. And then there's the guy that when Williams found out and he's walking back in, and he's like, and Williams like, I'm here to compete. And he's like, you're here to be arrested. And he does like the big nod. Like that dude is selling the shit out of that nod. And I remember that one because he's just so over the top with the nod. And then just because of his look, in the final Lansing scene, before Benny's like realized, oh shit, Will's hurt, I need to like to stall. The fucking flag guy's got the mullet hair.
Oh yeah.
I just love his look because he's just like, and he's got the hair, just the mullet curled hair just flowing off. It's like, that's a choice. You didn't have to have a mullet guy in this movie, but you chose to throw a mullet guy in, and that's the perfect placement for it. There's just so many like just little moments. Rufus is so good at playing this scene. I love, and like I say, it's a little scene, and because like, that's what I love about it. It's the little things. It's the moment where I don't want to keep calling him Rufus. Adamar. It's after William's been captured, and he's in like his like cell, and he's all like hanged up like this, and he's
stocks. Yeah.
The stocks. Well, no, he's not in the stocks.
Or not in the chains. Yeah.
He's in that. He's just standing there, and Adamar's talking to him, and you can tell like Will's just kind of zoned out, and you have that moment where he says one last thing, and Will's still just kind of, and you see Rufus's eyes, and he just starts like, his eyes just start going all over the place, because he's just like, I can't, why won't he give me anything? He just fucking punches him real hard one last time. But it's like, it's that frustration in Adamar's face, and Rufus does it so amazingly. Like you just watch his eyes are going insane at that moment, because he so badly just wants William to like explode, and William won't give it to him, because he's at this point he's lost everything, and there's no reason to give him that satisfaction. But I love his performance in this film. I don't really care for his Mark, or his Paul Bettany character, his liege. That actor.
I think that person was supposed to be like,
I know he's just a little like
in comparison to him.
Exactly. He's the one actor that I just can't really get behind in this film. But I also I've said this a few times on the show where it's like there's kids that I actively want to like cause harm to in a movie because they're either annoying as fuck. That kid that waves at Will when they're parading in for the championship, and then later he's the one that runs up and slaps Will in the back of the head when he's in the stocks. I wish that kid would have gotten tripped by Wart and just punched in the fucking head. Cause like, fuck you, kid. Like, you are a little shit, and I hope like, or I keep calling him Ward, it's Watt. But I kind of wish Watt would have like tripped that kid afterwards. It's like, how dare you slap William in the back of the head, you motherfucker. But yeah, like I still I think to this day, like I said, I don't like the "We Will Rock You" at the beginning, and I also really hate how it ends. I'm not talking about like when they say you have been weighed, you have been measured, you've been found wanting. It's talking about like he runs up to Jocelyn and they start to kiss, and then it like goes into like this weird like night scene, like at night, and it just like ends that way. It's like what it's like a Moulin Rouge scene. It's like, what the fuck are we doing here? And that's the last moment you get of the film. It's like I said, there's just little things here and there that like irk me, but you've learned to kind of deal with it and embrace it because the rest of the movie is just so fucking good.
Yeah, well, I think part of that is Brian Helgeland, who directed this. I mean, this is a guy who had written a bunch of movies like from Assassins and LA Confidential and some other stuff, and then he directed his first movie he directed was Payback with Mel Gibson, which was notoriously kind of a flop. But then he came out with this director's cut, which is actually it's one of those director's cuts that actually quite improves on the theatrical version that got released. But you could still tell that he was a little kind of rough around the edges as a director, because like you said, in the way it ended and things like that, it wasn't quite there, and his career never really took off after this either. So
it was almost like they wanted it to still feel very MTV-ish, kind of thing. And then, of course, even that, like, and we've knocked this on the show many times. The dance.
Well, that's the thing is, I think they didn't know how they wanted this movie to be. Was it going to be like this period thing, or did they want to try and make it like the marketing to the MTV crowd, things like that? Yeah. So it's kind of like was trying to have both worlds.
But yeah, because like even the dance sequence, we usually make fun of that shit for like how the fuck does everyone know the choreograph? But I love that dance scene. I love what Heath and or William and Jocelyn do in that scene. I love their dance numbers and stuff like that. But it's like I'm watching everyone else like, you guys didn't even know how this dance went. How are you guys all in sequence with him now? Like he's like but I was like, I love watching those two, and even the song that they play through it is great. But yeah, this is a movie that, for me personally, will stand the test of time. This is a movie that I will watch 20 years from now, 30 years from now, and still love it. Like I did, when I fully embraced the film, back when I was a teenager. Cause like I said, I refused to watch it for the longest time. And if it wasn't for me, like watching the end, like 20 times in a week when I'm working at the movie theater, I probably wouldn't have watched this movie for the longest time. Eventually, obviously, the word of mouth of it, like with you, with everyone loving it, I probably would have eventually checked it out. But if it wasn't for me becoming an usher that week, because the same thing happened with Shrek the following week, because I kept catching the "I'm a Believer" at the end of Shrek, because that was another movie I had no interest in seeing, and then all of a sudden I had to go see Shrek. I don't know if my love would have been as strong for this movie had it not been, because it's a memory. Like when I think of Knight's Tale, I think back to my time working at the movie theater, just like you do with some of your films, thinking back to when you were working at Suncoast. And Knight's Tale is one of those special films because it's the first movie of being an usher, which is what I love the most about working at the movie theater, because there's just stories upon stories upon stories. And this was the very first story for me when it came to being there. But anything else you'd like to add for Knight's Tale?
Nope. Currently on Netflix and AMC Plus.
Yes, which I watched it on Netflix, even though I've got like every copy of it available right now, except for digital. I don't have it on digital. But yeah, these are two movies. That's what I say. Like Brian and I, we love talking about shit films. That's why we do Cinemasochism, except we're probably not going to have fun talking about our next one. Nor did we have fun talking about last week's. But when we do get movies on Weekly that we just love and adore, we obviously bring a different energy to the show. Much like Brian last week with Oscar, and then he got even more excited once he found that I actually liked Oscar. But when you get movies like this that we are so just in love with, it's a lot more fun to talk about these films. We hope you guys enjoy these movies as well, because these are two films that, if you're a movie fan, you probably have seen these. You might not love them as much as we do, but you definitely have seen them. And if you have not seen them, you need to go out of your way to see both these films. But we hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you guys did, go and hit that like, share, and subscribe button to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos pop up on Movie Crusaders. And of course, looking to follow some of the social media outlets you see below. Out right now, our summer movie preview, where Brian and I are talking about almost all the movies that come out during the summer, what we are excited for, what we're not excited for, what we care about, what we don't care about. But most importantly, we come out with our predictions for what we think will be the top 10 box office hits at the end of the summer, which will come back in September, and we'll see exactly how right and wrong we are, probably more wrong than right. In terms of reviews, we had a lot of movies come out this week, but not a lot of them were out in my area. I think the only one that was out in my area was Hypnotic, and I was just like, I'm really just not in the mood to go spend money to watch Hypnotic because I haven't heard anything really good about it. Brian broke my heart the other day because he went and saw Fool's Paradise, which was very anticipated on my eyes, and Blackberry, because we both love It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Brian thinks Fool's Paradise is one of the worst films of the year.
It's definitely down there. It's definitely one of the most disappointing films of the year. It's just not funny. I did not laugh once in this movie. Hugely disappointing.
And you thought Blackberry was fine, but
Blackberry was pretty good actually. I ended up actually bumping my score up a little bit. I gave it a 3.
Oh, did you actually bump it?
Yeah.
Because you just told me it was fine. So you actually have gone.
I had given it a 3. I decided to give it a 3.5. I bumped it up just a little.
I have not watched Mother because what we said on the summer preview. Brian, I just can't trust J-Lo right now.
I'm planning on watching that later tonight, actually, but we'll see.
Okay. I almost thought about it, but I was like, I'm too busy with other things to give that time to her. Now, if Brian watches it and says, it was actually really, really good, I'd be like, all right, then I'll check it out. I want to still watch Michael J. Fox's documentary, but I just am not in the right mindset to watch it. And I know Brian won't, because Brian doesn't like to be sad when watching movies. There was one other.
I was sad enough watching Fool's Paradise.
There was one other movie that came out this week, and I can't remember what it is.
There's that Knights of the Zodiac movie.
That wasn't what I was thinking about, but it was Book Club, which I don't give a rat's ass about.
It's not new, but Air is on Amazon now.
Yeah, Air, which is one of my highest rated films of the year, so you should check out Air if you have not seen it. Also, our non-spoiler and spoiler discussion of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is also available on the channel. Coming up next, we have Cinemasochism, where we will be talking about F9 right before FX comes out here next week. Is it next week?
Next week. Yeah.
Yeah. We will have plenty to say about that. Also, I didn't shoot a review for it, but I did see Pope's Exorcist, and we both saw Pope's Exorcist. Brian, what were your thoughts on it real quick?
I was pleasantly surprised by that. I think that exorcism movies and demon possession movies and stuff, there are tons of them out there, and most of them suck. This one, I mean, I'm not going to say it's a great movie, but I was pleasantly surprised, and I think it's mostly due to Russell Crowe and then the direction by the guy who did Julius Avery, who did Overlord.
Yeah, I thought it was fine. It did lose me a little bit in the third act because this is supposed to be a true story, and the third act goes a little too far with it. But I thought like you said, for an Exorcist film, it's actually pretty good. I also saw Peter Pan and Wendy, which I know Brian's avoiding that like the plague because Brian doesn't want to watch live action Disney films. I actually enjoyed it. They do something different with the Hook Pan storyline, which at first I was like, I don't know if that's going to work, but it honestly made the film better. It's the best Peter Pan film since Hook, which I know Brian doesn't care about that because he doesn't like Hook. I love Hook. So I think it's definitely worth checking out for anyone who wants to see it or is curious about it. But next week we got Fast X, which we will definitely have a discussion on that. Was there anything else besides Fast X that comes out next week? You're muted.
No, next week it pretty much has that to itself.
All right. So yes. So like I said, we don't have a lot of movies coming or a lot of videos coming out this week or coming up week, but we will have obviously so much coming out this summer. Trust me, you guys are gonna get sick of us. But next week. We will be back for another episode of Weekly Crusaders. Let me pull up what they are so I can guess or give you guys hints real quick on what we were going to pick. Oh, wait. I have to decide. We both have to decide still. We both have two choices. So I can't give you clues on those yet. Other than both my films. One Brian has never seen, the other one Brian likes, and Brian's choices. I love one, and I've not seen the other one. So we're both. Who knows what we're going to pick on that? But until next time, we are the Movie Crusaders. I'm Sean Wasserkrug. That's Brian Michaels. And until next time, in case we don't see you, go watch some movies and go have some fun.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.